Have you ever thought about investing in physical gold and silver?
Mm-hmm.
Like holding actual bars and coins in your hand.
Yeah, it's definitely a fascinating concept.
Yeah. It's like this idea of having this tangible wealth, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you can actually touch and feel.
Right.
So we're going to dive into a YouTube video by this investor, Nolan Matthias.
Okay.
And he actually calls physical gold and silver his stupidest investment.
Wow, that's a pretty strong statement.
Right. It makes you wonder what went wrong.
Yeah, what happened there?
So Matthias, he starts by explaining how he got into physical precious metals in the first place.
Okay.
So this is back in 2014. He was following a value investing newsletter,
Right.
and they were really advocating for owning gold and silver
Hmm.
as a hedge against inflation,
Yeah. Mm.
and even as a potential bug out strategy, like a way to transport wealth in a crisis.
Yeah, the bug out strategy, that's a classic one.
Right.
It's interesting to think about how relevant that is in today's world,
Yeah.
with everything being so digital.
Exactly. So yeah, Matthias actually invested a significant amount in physical silver.
Okay.
It was around 160 ounces, which is a little over 10 pounds.
Wow.
And that was worth about $5,000 at the time.
Okay. So he was serious about this.
He was serious about stacking, as they say in the precious metals community.
Yeah, I've heard that term.
Right.
It's important to remember that relying solely on newsletters for investment advice can be risky.
Yeah.
Even those inspired by renowned investors like Warren Buffett.
Hmm.
Diversifying your sources of information and doing your own research is always crucial.
Absolutely. That's a great point. So Matthias had this silver stash, right? But then he had this experience that really changed his perspective.
Okay.
He tells this story about buying two seemingly identical 10-ounce silver bars,
Mm-hmm.
one from NTR Metals and one from Sunshine Mint.
Okay.
And he paid roughly the same price for each.
Right.
But when he later tried to sell the NTR bar, he was told it was worth 15% less than the Sunshine Mint bar.
What? Really?
Yeah.
That's a big difference for what should be essentially the same product.
Right.
It highlights the importance of understanding the nuances of the physical precious metals market.
Okay.
For example, refinery reputation can play a big role in pricing.
Oh, okay.
Sunshine Mint is a well-established and respected refinery,
Mm.
while NTR metals might be lesser known, which could explain the lower resale value.
Oh, so it's not just about the weight and purity of the silver, but also like the reputation of the refiner.
Exactly. And there's also the issue of bar certification.
Okay.
Some refineries produce bars that are certified by independent third-party assayers,
Right.
which adds a layer of assurance and can increase their value.
Okay.
It's possible that the Sunshine Mint bar was certified while the NTR bar wasn't,
Oh, I see.
further explaining the price difference.
Wow. This is getting way more complicated than I initially thought.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider when you're dealing with physical precious metals.
Right. Seems like there's a lot more to consider than just buying like a shiny bar of silver.
Right. Absolutely. This incident really opened Matthias's eyes to the complexities and potential pitfalls of this market.
Mm-hmm.
He started to realize that the margins in this market can be quite thin,
Yeah.
which can create incentives for some dealers to take advantage of uninformed buyers.
Yeah, and he explicitly mentions the prevalence of scams and counterfeits in the physical precious metals market.
Right. That's a scary thought.
Yeah.
Buying what you think is gold or silver only to find out it's fake.
Right. That's a huge risk.
Absolutely. Due diligence is paramount when venturing into this market.
Huh.
Researching reputable dealers, understanding refinery markings, and even learning how to test for authenticity are crucial steps
Wow.
to protect yourself from fraud.
So Matthias started realizing that physical gold and silver might not be as straightforward an investment as they initially seemed.
Right.
What did he do next?
Well, he decided to explore alternative ways to invest in precious metals.
Okay.
He mentions shifting his focus to mining company stock certificates and ETFs that track the price of gold and silver.
Okay, so those sound like more traditional investment vehicles.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are the advantages of those options compared to owning the physical metals?
Well, for one thing, they offer greater ease of storage.
Yeah.
You don't need a heavy-duty safe or a bank safety deposit box to store certificates or manage your ETF holdings.
Right.
They reside securely within your brokerage account.
That's definitely more convenient, especially if you're holding a significant amount.
Right.
Are there any other advantages?
Yeah, liquidity is another major advantage.
Okay.
With traditional investments, you can buy and sell fractions of shares quickly and easily through your brokerage account.
Right.
This is much more difficult with physical metals, where you often have to find a buyer willing to purchase the entire bar or coin.
That makes sense. It sounds like traditional investments offer more flexibility and control.
Exactly.
Did Matthias highlight any other benefits?
Yes, he emphasizes the reduced risk of fraud when dealing with established financial institutions and regulated markets.
Right.
While scams and counterfeits are a concern with physical metals,
Hmm.
that risk is significantly mitigated when investing through traditional channels.
It sounds like Matthias was starting to see the downsides of his initial approach.
Yeah, he was definitely having some second thoughts.
Did his experience with those silver bars change his whole perspective on investing in precious metals?
It definitely influenced his thinking. He began to question the wisdom of holding physical gold and silver,
Okay.
especially as a bug-out strategy.
That's interesting because he was initially drawn to physical metals for that very reason,
I
right?
know, right?
Like this idea of having portable wealth in times of crisis.
It seems counterintuitive.
Yeah, what made him reconsider?
Well, he argues that in the digital age, physically transporting large amounts of precious metals is becoming increasingly impractical and risky.
Okay.
Imagine trying to cross a border with thousands of dollars worth of gold or silver.
Right.
It's likely to attract unwanted attention and could even raise suspicions with authorities.
Yeah, you'd probably end up triggering every metal detector in the airport.
Exactly. Not exactly a discreet way to travel.
Right.
And beyond the logistical challenges, Matthias also points out that the concept of a bug-out strategy itself is becoming less relevant.
Okay.
In today's interconnected world where financial systems are increasingly globalized, the idea of needing to physically flee with your wealth seems less likely.
I see. So if physical gold and silver are becoming less practical for bugging out, what does Matthias propose as an alternative?
He suggests that cryptocurrencies, particularly Bitcoin, might offer a more viable option for wealth preservation in uncertain times.
Crypto.
Yeah.
That's fascinating how Matthias, someone who was initially drawn to the tangible security of physical precious metals, is now considering digital assets as a potential alternative.
Right. It's a pretty big shift in perspective.
Yeah, it really highlights how the financial landscape is changing.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
certainly does. Of course, it's crucial to acknowledge that cryptocurrencies come with their own set of risks and volatility.
Right.
But the fact that Matthias is even considering them as part of a bug-out strategy speaks volumes about how perceptions of value and security are evolving in the digital age.
Yeah, that's a whole other deep dive waiting to happen.
For sure.
So Matthias is shifting away from physical gold and silver,
Mm-hmm.
but he mentions making an exception for certain pieces.
Mm-hmm.
What does he decide to keep?
He distinguishes between his investment-grade gold and silver, which he's selling, and his inherited collection of coins and currency, which he's keeping.
Oh, okay.
He sees a fundamental difference between the two.
That's an interesting distinction. It seems like he's recognizing different types of value, like investment value versus sentimental value.
Exactly. He's acknowledging that while he no longer sees physical bullion as a practical investment for him, he still values the historical and personal significance of his inherited collection.
Right.
These items represent family history memories and a tangible connection to the past, which holds a different kind of value for him.
Yeah, it's like that old family photo album or a handmade quilt passed down through generations. Their value lies not in their monetary worth, but in their emotional significance and the stories they represent.
Precisely. And Matthias even expresses an interest in collecting discontinued coins and currency items that hold a certain allure due to their scarcity and historical significance.
So even though he's divesting from investment-grade gold and silver, he's still fascinated by precious metals, especially those with a story to tell.
Yeah, it seems like he's shifting his focus from purely financial motivations to something more nuanced.
Right.
He's not abandoning precious metals altogether. He's simply refining his approach,
Yeah.
moving away from the purely financial aspect and embracing the historical and collectible dimensions.
It sounds like Matthias's journey has been a real learning experience filled with unexpected twists and turns.
It definitely has.
What are some of the key takeaways from his story so far?
Well, I think one of the biggest takeaways is that physical gold and silver, while alluring, can be a surprisingly complex and risky investment. There's a lot more to it than simply buying some shiny bars or coins. You need to be aware of the potential for scams, counterfeits, price manipulation, and storage challenges.
Right, and you need to weigh those risks against the benefits of traditional investment methods,
Absolutely.
which offer greater convenience, liquidity, and security.
Exactly. And Matthias's experience also highlights the importance of constantly evaluating your investment strategies in light of new information and a changing world.
That's a really important point. We can't just set our investment plans on autopilot and forget about them.
Right.
We need to be adaptable and willing to adjust course as the financial landscape evolves.
Precisely. And speaking of a changing landscape, Matthias's exploration of cryptocurrencies as a potential bug-out strategy raises some fascinating questions about the future of wealth preservation in the digital age.
Yeah, that's a topic we'll definitely need to explore further. It seems like this deep dive is just getting started.
It is.
But before we move on, let's pause here for a moment and let our listener absorb everything we've covered so far. What stands out to you from Matthias's experience with physical gold and silver?
Hmm. Let me think about that for a second. Yeah, it is a lot to think about.
It's like we often have these preconceived notions about certain investments,
Right.
but Matthias's story really shows us the importance of looking beyond the surface
Mm-hmm.
and really understanding all the nuances involved.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. The
Right.
deeper you go, the more complexity you uncover.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And speaking of uncovering layers, I think it's fascinating how Matthias's experience also highlights this evolving nature of the bug out strategy.
Yeah.
Like this idea of physically transporting wealth across borders.
Right.
It almost seems archaic in today's digital world.
It really does. The rise of cryptocurrencies, with their ability to transfer value so quickly and securely across borders,
Right.
it's definitely challenged this traditional notion of a bug out strategy.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, what does preparedness even mean in the 21st century?
Right? What does that even look like anymore?
In the past, having a stash of gold or silver might have provided a sense of security,
Mm-hmm.
but in today's interconnected world, the concept of a safe haven is taking on new dimensions.
It certainly is. And Matthias's decision to explore cryptocurrencies as a potential alternative to physical precious metals,
Right.
it speaks volumes about how perceptions of value and security are shifting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm also struck by how Matthias distinguishes between his investment-grade gold and silver, which he's selling,
Right.
and his inherited collection of coins and currency, which he's keeping.
Yeah.
It seems like he's recognizing this difference between financial value and sentimental value.
Absolutely. He's acknowledging that while he no longer sees physical bullion as a practical investment, he still values the historical and personal significance of his inherited collection.
Right.
Those pieces represent family history, tangible connections to the past.
Yeah, it's like those old family photos
Right.
or a piece of antique furniture passed down through generations.
Yeah.
Their value lies not in their monetary worth, but in their emotional significance and the stories they represent.
It's true. They become almost like family heirlooms.
Right.
They hold a unique value that transcends their market price. And Matthias even expresses an interest in collecting discontinued coins and currency.
Hmm.
He sees them as potential investments, but I think he's also drawn to their scarcity and historical significance.
Yeah. It's fascinating how he's pivoting from purely financial motivations to something more nuanced.
Right.
He's not abandoning precious metals altogether. He's simply refining his approach,
Yeah.
moving away from the purely financial aspect and embracing the historical and collectible dimensions.
That's a really good point. And it raises an interesting question. How do we define value in a world where the lines between investment history and sentimentality are becoming increasingly blurred?
Yeah. It's a question that resonates with me personally.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few old books and vintage photographs that I cherish, not because of their monetary value, but because of the memories and emotions they evoke.
Oh, yeah, I can relate to that.
Hmm.
We all have those objects or experiences that hold a special meaning for us, a value that can't be measured in dollars and cents.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Matthias's journey with physical gold and silver can teach us a lot about being more thoughtful investors, about recognizing that value can manifest in different forms.
Absolutely. His story encourages us to look beyond the surface,
Right.
to consider the historical context, the emotional resonance, and the personal stories that shape our relationship with the things we value.
So as we move forward in this deep dive, let's keep in mind this broader perspective on value.
Okay.
It's not just about the numbers on a spreadsheet.
Right.
It's about understanding the deeper meaning and significance behind our financial decisions.
It's interesting. We often equate gold and silver with this idea of safety and stability.
Yeah, it's like this ultimate hedge against uncertainty, this
Yeah.
timeless store of value.
Right. But Matthias's experience shows us that even these seemingly safe havens,
They can be vulnerable to market fluctuations and shady dealers and even like outright scams.
right, it really challenges our assumptions about what truly constitutes a safe investment.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, if the allure of physical gold and silver might be fading a bit in this digital age.
Yeah, with the rise of cryptocurrencies and the increasing ease of global transactions,
Right.
The whole concept of a bug-out strategy is being redefined.
It's almost as if that traditional image of someone fleeing with a suitcase full of gold bars
Right.
is becoming a relic of the past.
It's definitely a thought-provoking shift in perspective.
Yeah, I'm also really struck by how Matthias is drawing a distinction between investment-grade precious metals
Right.
and items with sentimental value.
Yeah, it's like he's recognizing that certain things hold a value that transcends their market price.
Right. Those inherited coins and currency, they're not just pieces of metal to him.
No, they represent family history, a tangible connection to the past.
It's a reminder that our relationship with money and value can be really personal and multifaceted.
Absolutely. It's not always about maximizing returns or finding the most efficient store of wealth.
Sometimes it's about holding on to things that have a deeper meaning, things that tell a story.
Right, and that connection to history and personal significance, that's something that can't be replicated in a digital asset.
Makes you wonder if there's a growing appreciation for these tangible connections
Mm.
in a world that's increasingly virtual.
Perhaps it's a counterbalance to the digital revolution,
Right.
a way to ground ourselves in something real and enduring.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of physical gold and silver,
Hmm.
what's the one key takeaway you'd like to leave with our listener today?
I'd say this: challenge your assumptions about value. Don't be afraid to question conventional wisdom and explore different perspectives.
Okay.
Whether it's physical gold or digital assets or a cherished family heirloom, understanding what truly holds value for you is a journey worth taking.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.